70. Whereas, during Black History Month, we celebrate the achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economy, cultural, spiritual, and political development. And whereas, in 1915, Dr. Carter Goodwin Woodson, noted Black scholar and son of former slaves, founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, which was later renamed the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And whereas, in 1976, as part of the National Bicentennial Black History Week, was expanded to become established as Black History Month and is now celebrated all over North America. And whereas, the city of Wichita is proud to honor the history and contributions of African Americans in our community throughout our state and throughout our nation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Brandon Whipple, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2022 as Black History Month in the City of Wichita, and urge all citizens to celebrate our diverse heritage and culture and continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all.
Good morning. Mayor Whipple, Council Members Johnson, Tuttle, Hohausel, Brobaugh, and Fry, and Ballard, thank you this morning for this opportunity to receive this proclamation. My name is Denise Sherman, and I am the Executive Director of the Kansas African American Museum. The Kansas African American Museum is proud to move forward with our mission it endeavors to make the Kansas African American experience resonate with every Kansan. And our vision for the Kansas African American Museum is to be the premier place where communities come and learn and tell more about the Kansas African American history. And again, established in the late 1800s, Calvary Baptist Church became the heart of the community in 1917, where the building stood as a keystone of the African American community. From there in 1972, it became the first National Black Historical Society to serve to preserve the history, heritage, and legacy of the African American community. And then in 1997, the first National Black Historical Society became the Kansas African American Museum, where we are positioned to serve not only in the city, the community, statewide, and beyond. Our 4 pillars, which revolve around art and artifacts in our collection, history, heritage, and legacy, education, and cultural awareness, enrichment, engagement, and immersive experiences. We are proud to receive this acknowledgement during the Black History Month. You did mention Carter G. Woodson, and I appreciate the opportunity that you shared the history that this was initially Black History Week and moved forward to in the 1970s to be Black History Month. I just want to make just one note here and just share a few names. Our collective history in Wichita, Kansas is vast, and we know that many African Americans have served not only in civic positions, but in the community and beyond. Chester I. Lewis, civil rights attorney, former Mayor Carl Brewer, A. Price Woodard, our first African American appointed mayor, and our police chief, Norman Williams, and Emerson McAdams, to whom McAdams Park is named after, are just a few of the people that you will learn more about at the Kansas African American when you arrive. So we invite everyone to take time for the remainder of the month and the remainder of the year to stop by the Kansas African American Museum and learn more about our collective history. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Public agenda, Ken Thomas, animal maintenance permit application.
Rolling into our public agenda, the chair recognizes Mr. Ken Thomas. Good morning, sir, and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me today. I have a place at 2300 North Broadway. It's a pretty good sized building, have a lot of acreage there, but we've been having problems with vandalism. I just call them urban terrorists. They come in, they steal. We have them coming in with weapons, knives, guns, hatchets, baseball bats, whatever. And when we see them coming in, we have the police, of course, refuse to clear the building. So what we're doing is we're going back and looking because we look at it to get some dogs coming in, and we have working dogs. And that's why we're looking at this maintenance permit, animal permit. And how we look at it, when we started looking at the applications said you have to have the dogs before you have the application. I'm going, wait a minute, I don't want to be in violation of the ordinance before I get the application. I talk to the people, the police, they say, well, you can go ahead and fill it out. But then when we come back to the neighborhood application where they want me to come around and talk to the neighborhood, well, the neighborhood we're in is industrial. We don't have no residents. The neighborhood application is for residential, not for industrial. And so we're having a little problem running through this. Only thing we're looking at is right now we have like Kansas KHP, Highway Patrol. You know, they want our building's so big. The guy kind of said, Ken, you just need to get some dogs. And so that's what we're doing. We're looking at getting working dogs, probably up to 19, because we got this huge facility, and that's what we're looking at. And we probably have to come back up here because we're looking at doing that. And it'll be first, and then we'll go ahead and get the USDA permit and finish with that. But that's what we're looking at. And sometimes how this permit's written is they can, without getting any variance, you can't fill this completely out, you cannot get your variance. So if you don't have the dogs, you can't get your variance. So it's kind of like a catch-22. I'm having a little bit of problems, and hopefully y'all can help me out if you can. I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
So, Mr. Thompson, it sounds like you have a industrial warehouse that has been broken into, and you need permits to put dogs on the premise to try to deter further crime. And the permit process won't allow you to fill them out until you actually invest in the dogs. And at this point, you don't want to buy dogs and set them up without the permit. Is that the gist of?
Yes, I want to get the cart in front of the horse, sir.
Right. And I guess I'll defer to the manager. What's the best way to move forward with a situation like this? The process stuff usually falls into our administrative branch, so the manager could likely give us some help right now.
Yeah, Mayor, I need time to visit with staff. We have Mr. Thomas's contact information, so we'll circle back with him.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, sir.
Well, we appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Please reach out again if there's any issues you find with the process that we can try to tighten up from the bench.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 13.
Has every member had a chance to review the consent agenda, and if so, is there any discussion? Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to pull number 5 for discussion.
Item number 5 will be pulled and discussed next. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? If there's no further discussion on the consent agenda, then I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda with items 1 through 13 with the exception of item 5. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast a vote. Having received 78 votes, that motion does pass. We are now on item 5, the consent agenda. The chair recognizes Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. So I don't know that we need a staff presentation on this. It is in the consent package. This is the sale of city-owned land in the 1200 block of South Ridge Road. I have no issues with the proposed sale or the staff recommendation. My concern is, or the idea that I have, and I've talked with Councilmember Blue about this, for a couple of years now, we've been talking about that gateway at Kellogg and Eisenhower Parkway. You drive through it, the guardrails are rusty and broken, there's concrete barriers that are damaged. It's an eyesore, which should be the gateway to the airport. There has not been funding available to address that issue. And because it's kind of a unique jurisdictional between the City of Wichita, KDOT, and the Airport Authority, there hasn't been a real push to maybe make something happen. With this opportunity for this sale of the adjacent property, there's an opportunity to maybe do something with that. And because we have the ability to otherwise direct the funding from this sale, I would like to entertain the idea of dedicating that proceeds to the capital improvement plan so that staff can work up concepts, enhancement opportunities, and then come back to the council as part of the CIP plan to address that enhancement area, because it is economic development. And that's why we're selling this property, to be able to utilize that area much better, bring money into the city, but also at the same time, we can address a problem area that needs some TLC. So, Councilmember Blubaugh, you want to add to that any?
Councilmember Blubaugh.
Thanks, Brian. It's been something I've heard about for years and years. I've always been told it's a KDOT responsibility, but nothing seems to have been done. Do you have an explanation, or do you know what the responsibility is, Bob?
I think Councilmember Fry described it pretty accurately. You've got three jurisdictions all coming together there. You are involved in two of those, Airport Authority as well as the City of Wichita. But yes, that bridge is the responsibility of KDOT. And in fact, they had an improvement project about a year ago where they resurfaced the bridge, but didn't address the guardrails and some of the other issues that we've talked about. Some of the property that I think Councilmember Fry is interested in is actually outside of their jurisdiction and is ours. So we, if the council wishes to have these funds diverted for those improvements, you would just need to waive City Council Policy 37 and earmark these funds into the capital improvement program, and then we'll go ahead and see what we can do for beautification of that bridge and interchange.
And of course, just so we get the policy down, if there's a motion to redirect these funds into the CIP, then there would be a process to accept bids on repair of that area, and then the money that is left over, would that stay in the CIP, or would we want to put that back in a general fund?
I have that as part of my motion. The idea would be to, any leftover, any remaining, would go back to the Economic Development Fund as Policy 37 directs. We split it right now between Economic Development and General Fund. Depending upon how much we actually use or not, I would say any leftover goes back to the Economic Development Fund, because that fund needs to stay sustainable. The only time we replenish that fund is when we sell property. So that way, any remaining would go back to it.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Any input from the public on this item? See none, we'll bring discussion back. Councilmember Fry, the floor is yours for a motion.
Thank you, sir. And yes, I have discussed this with City Manager Layton as well as Public Works. So with that, I move that the City Council approve the real estate purchase agreement with all unrestricted proceeds from the sale, net of fees, be directed to the capital improvement plan for the purpose of beautification and infrastructure enhancements to the area of Kellogg, US 54, and Eisenhower Parkway, waive Policy 37 for this purpose, and that any unused excess dollars be returned to the Economic Development Fund and authorize the necessary signatures.
Motion has been made by Councilmember Fry, then seconded by Councilmember Blubaugh. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast their vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Board of Bids and Contracts and Wichita Airport Authority Board of Bids and Contracts dated February 14th, 2022.
Good morning.
Good morning, Melinda Walker, Purchasing Manager. For engineering today, we have Stryker Sports Phase 8, Locker Room 8, and Press Box Expansion. We're deferring to February 28th. SWD 448 to serve Cedar Creek Addition, Apex Excavating LLC for $298,515. For K-15 North Water Main Replacement, Meese Construction, for $1,368,835.50. Sagebrush NRD Addition Entrance and NRD Addition, APAC, Kansas, aggregate total $773,739.05. McDonald Golf Course Drainage Improvements, Dollinger and Sons Construction, aggregate total $389,660.98. Paving 2022, OP3, Concept, doing business as Kansas Paving, $4,541,251.45. For purchasing, we have the Neighborhood Cleanup and Bulky Waste Connections of Kansas for $79,677, and secondary contractor at $190 on site, and Exhibit B for itemized pricing. Pump station mounting skid and piping repair at McDonald Golf Course, recommend Charles Sargent Irrigation for $57,168. And our airport is remediation for the 1955 Midfield Road Facility. ProSite Technologies, aggregate total $37,172.26. How to register for the City of Wichita. And our open requests for proposals, and approve the bid awards as recommended.
Councilmember Frye.
Thank you. I don't know if this is going to be a question you can answer, Melinda, but on the golf irrigation at McDonald,
Yes.
I know that came in at $389. Last year, we approved $250 for that project, and so I don't know if, I see Public Works standing. Because I know we also approved $100,000 for the roof at Tex Consolver at that same time. I just want to make sure that isn't being sacrificed. And then also, why was it so much higher?
Mayor and council members, Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. So I'll start on the last part. The roof at Tex is substantially complete, so that money was preserved and that work is basically done. On the $250,000 estimate for McDonald, we had a little bit of a disconnect on the way that project started and the way the budget was established, and never quite caught up to it. That original estimate came from a contractor kind of looking at the work on the golf course. We started working through design and project development, but that $250,000 was estimated for construction only at the time. It did not include any project costs, which we've always got to include, which is the cost for design and staff time for oversight of design and construction, which can often be 35% of a project cost. Had we had that in there, we'd have been a little bit closer. So as we started through design, we actually bid this with an alternate part of this for replacement of one of the bridges. That ended up being about $80,000 of the bid. So the base bid came in at $312,000, so that's a little better compared to the $250 than looking at this overall number. I will tell you, in talking to contractors, you know, you've heard this same story about inflation, what's happening with material costs. There's also some additional costs here for having to work around an existing golf course. It's not quite the same as a lot of our projects in the areas to work. So I think there's a little bit of a premium on there. One of the contractors we talked to had some concerns about the steel piling for some of the work we're doing around the ponds and availability, and they ended up not even bidding for that reason. So I suspect there was a little bit of a premium put on potential delay costs for materials. All in all, I think we ended up fairly close. We knew we might not make it from that original bid, but because the Golf Operations Fund has the ability to cover it all, the recommendation is to include that alternate and get that other bridge replaced.
I appreciate that. I know there's been a lot of talk about golf the last few weeks, months, and I just was hoping that we weren't slicing up the budget anymore. So this is good news that we're able to do both of these projects. I understand the cost increases, certainly, but just want to make sure Tex wasn't getting lost in the...
No, sir. All taken care of, too.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tuttle.
Gary, before you go too far, thank you very much. I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you're there, I saw that Stryker's being delayed until February 28th. Can you just give us an update? I know that we were concerned that it was going to keep pushing it back and perhaps interfere with our ability to be competitive with getting some events there because of that. Do you have an anticipated timeline of when we'll have completion at Stryker since it's been delayed?
We're hoping to still be on track with the original, probably looking at sometime in August. Right now, the last thing we had heard, assuming that we do move forward and council approves our proposed plan for the 2 locker rooms around February 28th, March 1st, contractors is going to be ready to go. There's a lot that they're trying to get procured now, assuming that that'll happen, not to put the council in a bad spot, but they're looking ahead, trying to look ahead as far as they can. And our hope is August to September. Now, we'll tell you, there's still some potential issues with certain materials that could be a challenge, but we'll know more as soon as the bid's awarded, if and when it is.
Thank you.
And I apologize, that's not the clearest answer.
That's okay.
But if we can get to that point, we'll be able to clarify that a lot more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Further questions of staff? If none, is there input from the public on this item? If there is not, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? See none. With that, I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to receive and file the report, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Petitions for public improvements.
Gary, I hope you have your step counter on.
Sorry, I actually forgot that was me again. Again, Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. There's one petition for your consideration today that's been signed by 100% of the Improvement District and is valid per Kansas statute. In November of 2021, the City Council approved a petition for water improvements to serve Schulte Johnson Addition at Mays Road and south of Pawnee. The developer submitted a revised petition with a revised budget to cover the cost of the private bid. So it's just the one water petition at this time. Staff recommends City Council approve the revised petition and budget, adopt the amending resolution, authorize necessary signatures, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Are there questions for staff? See none. Thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? See none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the revised petition and budget, adopt the amended resolution, and authorize necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing considering an adoption of a public plan and approval of a development agreement for the Phase 1 project plan for the ICT 21 Redevelopment District tax increment financing.
Good morning and welcome, sir.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. Mark Elder with the Office of Economic Development. This item is a continuation from February 1st, but I'll go ahead and go through this and recap what the project is about as well as the development agreement. This is private development. It includes the redevelopment of the former El Paso site. It's approximately 115 acres. The developer does plan to develop around 1 million square feet of new construction in that area. It would include warehousing, manufacturing, industrial, and some transit facilities. in there. They will also do plan on participating in the city's spec industrial warehouse program, but each one of those projects would have to come back to the city council for approval, so they're not automatically approved within this development agreement today. The Phase 1 TIF project plan includes project areas 1, 2, and 3 of the TIF district. You can see those labeled here with the lines in there, 1 on the south of 21st, 2 and 3 are north of 21st Street. Here's a preliminary site plan of the concept of how this development would occur. And then, as development occurs, this may modify, but this is the concept that they are working through currently. This project has encountered several challenges as they've tried to develop that. One of the primary ones is the environmental contamination left from previous users of the land. It's created additional costs to both prepare the land, prepare it for development, but it's also going to have some ongoing costs the developer will have to deal with as they go forward. But the condition of the site also limits the type of development they can put in there due to the environmental concerns. This also creates a market gap with that land, creating a higher cost for them to develop that. And we're utilizing TIF to reduce those development costs and bring that land into a market rate. Here's a summary of what the developer is looking for in here. The land that they're developing and plan to sell, currently the market rate is about $1.50 to $3 a square foot. Without the use of TIF, in order to recover their costs, they would be needing to charge about $3.50 to $5.50 a square foot, but would also cause a negative return on the development for that to happen. But being able to utilize TIF and bring down some of those site costs, it brings their land back into a reasonable market price of $2 to $3 a square foot, and also a reasonable market return of about 9% for the project. The planned use for the tax increment financing is approximately $6 million. About $5.5 million of that is in the infrastructure improvements, but we also have about a 10% contingency in there just in case with the way costs are going today. We have some coverage there in case any of those costs go up. There's also $1.8 million of site improvements in that plan, but those are pay-as-you-go. So they'll only be used if and when those bonds are being repaid in there. And with that, just to cover that, the bonds will be covered, will be guaranteed by the developer. So if there's ever a shortfall in those payments, the developer would be making up that difference on that, keeping the city whole on that. The developers agreed to many milestones within that to be able to develop this property. I won't go through them all, but this is their planned phasing of development for this project over the next about 8 to 10 years. But then on top of that, so these are in addition to the milestones I just presented, they do have plans for 3 speculative warehouse, industrial warehouse buildings. Those are ones that they plan to do in there, but these will each come to the city council individually. They actually began their first one in November of last year, and then they have the other 2 planned over the next few years. And again, they will submit those applications for each building as they're ready to move forward with those. We do have representatives of the development team in the audience today that can answer any questions, but I will stand for any questions as well.
Is there questions for staff? See none? Thank you. Is there input from the public? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council. Andrew Nave, Greater Wichita Partnership, 505 East Douglas Avenue. I'll be brief. I wanted to just add some additional context to the support that the Greater Wichita Partnership has provided the ICT 21 project in the past, and really to remind you and to frame it around supply and demand, as that is so kind of top of mind right now with all of us with supply chains. The supply and demand crunch in our economic development product offerings is easily observable in this opportunity. We have to have development product like this, industrial development product in our community. From a supply standpoint, we have very little product of this size, either for land sites that are this large. The largest land sites we have in Sedgwick County of the industrial nature that are ready to go are not quite 60 acres. So this amount of land for industrial development is definitely needed. And then also what the developers, not a party to the TIF, but a part of the spec abatement program, the developers are proposing 180,000 square foot industrial building. We have no buildings anywhere near that size. We have one large kind of antiquated building on Rock Road that has 16-foot ceilings, so not effective and efficient for modern-day manufacturing and recruitment. So there's definitely a need from a supply standpoint. And then from a demand standpoint, we have activity. We had over 60 industrial projects from warehouse, manufacturing, distribution last year. We have submitted this site, ICT 21, on more than a half dozen projects that are evaluating this. It's not the only site, not the only building they're evaluating, and Wichita and our region is not the only place they're evaluating, but there is definitely demand. We're reading about, and you all are a party to reading the major developments, the major projects, the mega projects that are happening in our state. While this development wouldn't meet all of those criteria, it definitely gives us product and gives us a place to attract businesses, and not just to attract new businesses. What concerns me the most is that right now, because of the lack of buildings we have, if we had that major company that was in Wichita and needed to grow and needed to do so quickly, we don't have a building to keep them or to retain them. They might have to look at Dallas or Kansas City or another market. So from a supply and demand standpoint, this product is absolutely needed, and the partnership is fully behind it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Further input from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? Councilmember Bluebog.
Thanks, Mayor. I just had a question. How high are we going with the ceilings in this building? 32. Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Ballard.
Hi, if one of you guys would come up here, I have a couple questions about the project. Marty, you're the lucky one. I appreciate you guys coming.
Sure.
Welcome.
Good morning, all.
I just had a couple questions about the project. There's a section of the TIF qualifications that talks about exhausting all resources prior to asking for this funding. So just wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
I can elaborate on that, sure.
And just for the record, could you state your name?
Sure. Marty Cornejo, I'm with ICT 21 partner. And thanks, Mayor and Council, for having me here today. Sure, answer your question, Maggie. There's a process which we went through to exhaust all them out, and I can go through them kind of one at a time and let you know what we did, and in case you have any further questions on that. We spent obviously quite a few years to get to this point and to exhaust all our resources. We've applied for the Federal Economic Development Administration has funding, and we applied for that, and this project wasn't selected. We also applied to Kansas Department of Transportation, their cost share program for infrastructure funding. We were not selected for that as well. They selected another one. We discussed private funding infrastructure with lending institutions and whatnot, and not that they were necessarily scared or running from this project, but with all the extra work that needed to be done, the environmental and whatnot, that they weren't comfortable completely funding the entire project. So without the TIF, it would not and could not have happened. And as Andrew stated earlier, it's well needed, and it could not have happened. We did exhaust every resource. We worked with Mayor Layton's crew and Mark Elder and all to vet all the process, and in our estimation, we exhausted every possible resource.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. How will these investments be turned into increased property value?
Currently, this site was an ex-oil refinery site, as we all know. The public infrastructure will not be paid with special assessment of private funds, which would increase the price of the real estate. Through the cleanup, the removal of all the footings and foundations that were below grade and all, and everything that TIF is helping us along with will definitely increase the value, as Mr. Elder spoke to the numbers he had up on the board earlier. So definitely will increase the value of that property.
Okay, great. Just three more.
Sure.
Sorry.
Sure.
I know you talked about it just a tiny bit, but could you elaborate a little bit on the environmental piece? I know that when we all talk about that area, we all know that it was the old refinery, and if you could just touch on that
Sure.
just a little bit.
Yeah, we've, that was our biggest concern, and we spent the last, I'm gonna say, 5 to 7 years working on that key element. As we all know, it's an ex-refinery site, and we had to get everybody, and primarily ourselves, comfortable, our lending agencies comfortable with it. The site was, no one would be responsible for that. So we've taken great measure with the state, KDHE, spent many days with them folks, and we have actually got clear title from the Department of Health and Environment on that. We actually, the soil waste management plan was approved by KDHE in May of 2020, which give us a clear way to go. And an environmental use control agreement was also approved in 2018, and that was filed with Sedgwick County Register of Deeds in June of 2020. So we are all comfortable with the site. KDHE is really looking forward to seeing that site completely capped and covered. And what that means is pavement and buildings, the sooner the better. That will allow less infiltration into the groundwater. So everybody's pushing to get to that point.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about the timeline of the project? I know there was a slide that gave a little bit of information.
You know, the timeline for that site, the sooner the better as far as we are as the developers. As you've heard, our first 180,000 square foot warehouse is going up, and if you drive by or look around, you're going to see cranes and a lot of activity, infrastructure. I would like to think we'll see in the next 8 years that site be full and completed, and that's aggressive. But I really think with the need that Mr. Nave spoke about and all the inquiries we're having for development, I think that's going to happen. I will say, to add to that we are going out on a limb, and obviously through the spec building program, we're putting up buildings in hopes that people follow. But we think that's what it takes, is shovel-ready property, and so we are hopefully the sooner the better.
Great. Which brings me to my last question. And do you have any businesses ready and committing to the warehouses or buildings that you guys are building?
On the particular 180,000 square footer, we do have a very, very potential good tenant that will be new to Wichita, which is really what we're wanting. There's nothing wrong with growth in Wichita and other businesses with here prospering, but we're trying to attract new business to our community. So we do have one that I'm not privy to say who it is for half of the first warehouse. Should that happen, we'll be back in front of you for warehouse number 2 on spec building number 2. So to answer your question, Maggie, yes, we do.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Any further questions?
Seeing none.
Thank you all much.
Yeah, thank you for being here. All right, so discussion is back at the bench. Do we have further discussion on this item? Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to say I appreciate all the work in acquiring that property and trying to make something of it. I remember as a kid when it was a refinery. So seeing all the work and getting all those properties together for something productive for our city again is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Councilmember Bubag.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate you answering the question on the ceiling, because as Andrew said earlier, and I feel this in the real estate community, there's not the buildings out here, and everyone wants those high ceilings, and it really puts us in a position where we can't compete to bring people in whenever we don't have buildings like that. So appreciate you taking advantage of the spec program and going forth with this, and looking at 10 years, having $70 million more dollars on the tax rolls certainly isn't going to hurt Sedgwick County at all. So thank you.
Further discussion on the item. I also want to just express support and thank you for being here to take on questions. Thank you to the Councilmember Ballard for doing the due diligence. Although it pushed us off a couple weeks, I think it got much more questions and information out there. Really appreciate someone taking on such a project to reclaim land that frankly has been polluted and isn't up to market value in hopes of turning it around so it can be used for economic growth and development. So with that, I will recognize Councilmember Ballard for a motion.
So I'd like to take the staff's recommended action to take public comment, close the public hearing, and place the ordinance on first reading, adopting the project plan and approving the development agreement, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing and tax exemption request, CE Machine Company, Inc.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development for the record. The item before you is a request for an economic development exemption tax abatement for CE Machine. CE Machine was founded in 1975 as a manufacturer of medium-sized precision parts and assemblies for the aerospace industry. Its customers include Bell Helicopter, Textron Aviation, Boeing, Gulfstream, Embraer, among others. The company is located near Eisenhower Airport at 1741 South Hoover Court, which is near Hoover and Harry Street. On this aerial, you can see Harry Street running across the top of the aerial. Hoover Street is a little bit right of center. The area outlined in red is where the company is located. The expansion project that they are proposing would be on the north side of their campus. These are a couple of photos of the interior of CE Machine's facility. The company is requesting an economic development exemption tax abatement, or what we call an EDX tax abatement. The EDX program is a program that is authorized under the state of Kansas. To qualify, a company has to be in one of 3 general business categories. That is manufacturing, warehousing and distribution, or research and development. All of these would need to be with products that are used in interstate commerce. The company is proposing to build a 25,000 square foot expansion at a cost of approximately $1.3 million. Additionally, they will be investing about $600,000 in new machinery and equipment for that expansion. The company currently employs 98 people and projects that it will create 5 new jobs in the next 5 years with annual wages of $43,000. The company qualifies for a 90% abatement under the current economic development guidelines. To break down how we get there, based on job creation, the 5 jobs, they qualify for a 30% abatement. Based on the $1.9 million of capital investment, they qualify for an additional 40% abatement. Because they are in a regional growth plan sector, they qualify for an additional 10% abatement. And because they are utilizing state of Kansas incentives, they qualify for an additional 10%, again for a total of 90% abatement. The estimated value of 1 year of a 90% property tax abatement is approximately $34,000 a year, the city's share being approximately $9,600. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.37 to 1 for the city, 1.28 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 1.49 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and approve the first reading of the ordinance granting CE Machine Incorporated a 90% tax exemption on the identified real property improvements for a 5-year term, plus a 90% tax exemption for a second 5-year term, subject to City Council review. Tammy Eck with Eck CE Machine is here and can answer any questions specific to the company, and I would be happy to stand for any questions as well.
Is there questions for staff? See none. Is there input from the public? See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, then the chair recognizes Councilmember Bluebog as this resides in District 4.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm glad to see CE Machine extend the next 5 years. I think it's been 5 years since I've been out there, so I'd like to take the recommended action to close the public hearing and approve the first reading of the ordinance granting CE Machine Company, Inc. a 90% tax exemption on the identified real property improvements for a 5-year term plus 90% tax exemption for a second 5-year term, subject to city council review.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. I've received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Change order number 1 for Northwest Water Facility Project.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Alan King, Director of Public Works and Utilities. To give you a little background about the project that we are talking about, this is the new Northwest Water Treatment Plant that's currently under construction up by 21st and Hoover. It's a replacement of our current water treatment plant, which is some 80 years old, past its useful life, and so this is the project that we're talking about. When we're talking with the funding for this project is over $280 million covered by a fund through EPA, the WIFIA, which is very advantageous to the financing of this project, and another $267 million plus from KDHE through their state revolving fund. This project is being built with a design-build approach, where we had the designer actually come up with the project and then also commit to a negotiated guaranteed maximum price with the city. And so it's through this sort of an approach, we have our costs locked in, but then when we ask for something in addition to what the design builder agreed to, or they encounter conditions that could not have been anticipated, there is the potential for a change order. So far, we've had no change orders associated with this project. That's pretty remarkable when you consider how far we are into it and that this is a $500 million project. I would say that goes a long way to show the kind of work and quality and cooperation that we are getting from Wichita Water Partners, the design builder on this, to be this far along, and this be the first change order that we're bringing before you. There was a basis of design in the Phase 2 agreement, where we're currently in right now, that included the design for an administration building at one end of the project. This is where not only do city staff work, but also it's space available to the public as an interpretive center and also meeting space. We wanted to make sure that we took advantage of this opportunity to put in place an amenity for the community. It included restrooms as required by code, which was 3 stalls for the men's bathroom and 3 stalls for the women's bathroom. And this was a condition that was required by code, which the city and county have adopted, which is the basis for the design that was under consideration. It also requires at least this design that we're talking about here, the 6, was the least expensive and still met the code requirements. There is a steering committee that operates on this project. It's made up of city council members and representatives of other relevant stakeholder groups, and we meet with them from time to time and give them an idea about where the project's going along, and also to get direction and guidance from them. And when we brought the project to them for review regarding the administration building, there was a request to consider general neutral or family bathrooms in addition to the bathrooms that we showed. Even though that wasn't code, it was anticipated that with the nature of it being public facilities available to families and others, that this would probably be a good idea. Even though it wasn't necessarily code, it would ensure the usefulness of this facility on into the future. Well, we went through several iterations for a different sort of bathroom. I can tell you one of the questions that was asked earlier was, what kind of iterations? Well, we looked at converting all of them to family bathrooms, all of the facilities, and that was about $120,000. And what we're talking about the cost-wise is the revised design, getting it through the necessary design review, building permit inspection and that sort of thing, and also construction as well So it was about $120,000 for converting them to all gender neutral. We could stick with the $70,000, which is what we're talking about here, what we're proposing here, but we'd have to remove about half of the break room, and there'd be no public access to the break room. So even though the cost was about the same, it didn't seem functionally like that was a good alternative for us to consider. And then it was over $100,000 for another configuration that would take part of the meeting room, and we wanted to jealously guard the amount of seats that we had in that meeting room. There's not often opportunities for us to have this kind of a facility. So we did look at different alternatives, arrived at the current one that we're bringing before you today for consideration, and it's $70,000. So we brought it back to the steering committee, and they said, yes, make sure you sharpen your pencil, make sure the price is right, but yes, we agree with the concept of a change order to add this kind of facilities to the administration building. It's kind of hard to see, but in the kind of the lower right side of it, you see the bathroom complex. And what was done was, of the three sites, what do we call these, appliances for the women's bathroom, we took one of them and made it into a family bathroom. And then the same thing on the men's side. Of the three, we took one of them, leaving two, and made a family bathroom. So now we have two family bathrooms in the area that would serve the public. And we think this is a good balance for what we would anticipate being there at the facility. So what we're asking today is that you approve the change order and that you authorize the necessary signatures for us to go ahead and proceed with this change. And I'll stand for any questions.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan, for the presentation and sharpening your pencils. Appreciate the different looks at this challenge. Councilmember Johnson and I both serve on that steering committee, and we both felt that, moving forward with public facilities, this is something we have to address and continuing to make these facilities family-friendly. So I'm pleased with this design. It looks like it's still ADA compatible as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great, thank you.
Further questions for staff? Seeing none. Is there input from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just want to echo my colleague, Councilmember Fry, comments. Appreciate you all's work on that and getting that addressed. And the design looks good, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final product.
Further discussion? If there is no further discussion, then I will recognize Councilmember Fry, as I believe this project resides in his district. Councilmember.
Actually, it borders my district, but I'm happy to make the motion.
The floor is yours.
All right, thank you, sir. I move that we approve the change order to the design-build agreement with Wichita Water Partners and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Have received 78 votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Wichita Intervention Program Facility.
Good morning.
Morning, Mayor, Council. Kansas state law requires that any individual convicted of a first-time DUI serve 48 hours in jail and take a variety of classes. Since 1984, Wichita has had the Wichita Intervention Program, allowing people to satisfy this requirement of 48 hours custody in a non-jail environment while receiving classes that hopefully help, but not just hopefully, the statistics show that they reduce the recidivism of these individuals and help them reform themselves. The city has contracted with local hotels to provide this, and security makes it a 48-hour custodial period, although not under the supervision of the jail. The program primarily services Wichita Municipal Court, but also services individuals coming from other courts around the community. The city of Wichita solicited proposals from facilities to lodge 40 individuals for that period of time, provide meals, and provide meeting space and technical assistance to provide those classes to the people who will be attending. 2 hotels in the areas responded, and the selection committee reviewed and evaluated those proposals and chose the Holiday Inn Wichita East on I-35 as the facility that best met the needs of the program. Costs to the city for the program are funded through the general fund, although the costs are offset by a participant fee. And the municipal court is budgeted for this particular cost to the tune of $202,000 per year. The contract has been approved by form by law department, and the recommended action is that the city council approve the contract and authorize the necessary signatures. And I'll stand for any questions.
Vice Mayor Tuttle.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Nathan, and I'm going to be supportive. I just have a few questions, if that's okay, because I'm just curious more than anything. So the participants pay the $171 per person before participating?
The participant fee is actually $250. That's the cost of the overall hotel and meals, so there are other costs on top of that. And we run about $100 less for this program than other communities that have similar programs.
Okay, so they pay $250.
That's correct.
Okay, because I was going to ask about the admin fee, because it sounds like the participant fees are able to pay for the entire program, so that's how, right?
That's right. And,
Okay.
And the participant
That
fee
helped with
is
my math.
just a hair more than what the actual cost of the program. So it's it's a revenue neutral program.
Yeah, I was sitting with my calculator trying to figure it out, so, okay, great. What if they can't pay? What if somebody doesn't have $250 of disposable income? I'm just curious.
I don't believe that we have at this time, like a scholarship type program. But that's certainly something that if the council wanted us to explore that and try to find those type of things, we could do that, but at this time, we don't have that.
Okay, I was just curious. And then one last question again, just because I think this is a great program and just an opportunity to learn more. How many folks go through the program annually? How many folks participate and go?
Well, we generally have about 30 participants per class. We have classes nearly every weekend going forward. While I don't have that figure in front of me, right now, due to COVID, we do have a backlog. And so we're trying to work through that backlog, and the folks who teach the program have been very gracious, and we've added several more days to try to fulfill the community need and desire to attend this program instead of being physically incarcerated in the Sedgwick County Jail.
Yeah, thank you. And that was my last question, was about COVID, so thank you. Thank you for your work.
Further questions? Councilmember Hoheisel.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Real quick, I would be supportive of trying to figure out a scholarship program to help, people who are having a hard time paying these fees. But also, I was wondering if you had the recidivism rates of people who have gone through the program.
Yeah, I will get you those rates. I have those numbers, but not with me. They're very low. So it's a very successful program, and that's a performance measure that we deliver as part of our budget each year. But I'll get that to you today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further questions for staff? See none. Thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there's no further discussion, then I'll make a motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the contract with the Holiday Inn Wichita East I-35 and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. I've received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Emergency Rental Assistance Program Subrecipient Agreement.
Good morning and welcome, Director Stang.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Sally Stang, Director of Housing and Community Services, for the record. First item that I have for you today is a subrecipient agreement with the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation for the Wichita Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Some background, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, the Corona Bus Act, included $25 billion in emergency rental assistance funds. Each state received a minimum of $200 million based on population. 45% of the state's allocation could be accessed by local governments with population over 200,000. And by formula, we received just over $12 million. At least 90% of those funds has to be used for rent and utility payments for eligible households. The remaining 10% can be used for administration and housing stability services. The funds were available through September 30th, 2022. However, 65% of the funds had to be obligated by September 30th, 2021, or were subject to be recaptured by the Department of Treasury. The city's WRAP program launched on February 22nd, 2021, almost our one-year anniversary, and had 100% of its round one funds obligated by September 30th, 2021, and all of them expended by the end of the year. Included in the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, was an additional $21 billion for emergency rental assistance. As local government with more than 200,000 population, the city received $9,208,560.70. Up to 15% of that funding was eligible for administrative expenses, with an additional 10% available for housing stability services. 50% of the ARPA funding must be obligated by March 31st, 2022, or be subject to recapture, with the remaining funds expended no later than September 30th, 2025. 100% of our ARPA funds were obligated as of February 1st of this year. So, seeing that coming, on November 30th, 2021, WRAP requested reallocated funds from the Department of Treasury. And on December 30th, 2021, the program was awarded $943,151.79 in funds from other programs, recaptured from other programs that were underperforming. My slide says the grant agreement and funding have not yet been received. Well, we did receive it yesterday, so. On January 19th, 2022, the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation, who is the agency that administers the state's Kansas Emergency Rental Assistance Programs, CARA, as well as the Kansas COVID-19 Response and Recovery Office, met with the WRAP management staff to discuss the city entering into a subrecipient agreement with KHRC to assist in expending the state's emergency rental assistance funds. KHRC had proposed allocating $15 million to the city of Wichita from its round one funding, as WRAP had been expending about $2 million a month. The funding is subject to the Department of Treasury regulations associated with round one funding, including that up to 10% of the funds can be used for the administrative expenses. The subrecipient agreement also allows the funds to be administered in accordance with our WRAP procedures. Even though the funding's from the same source, we have the same regulations, our policies and procedures are slightly different. But the way the agreement is written, that program is, we're not running the CARA program, we're actually continuing to run the WRAP program. The funds must be expended by September 30th, 2022. It is exempt of any match requirements, and there's no impact to the general fund. The Law Department has reviewed and approved the subrecipient agreement as to form, and we are recommending that the City Council approve the subrecipient agreement with the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation and authorize the necessary signatures. And I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? Councilmember Ballard.
Hey, Sally, I just wanted to tell you thank you. I think you've done an incredible job. I know in the beginning with the RERAP program how chaotic it was and how it took a while to get some of the funds allocated. So I really appreciate that. And the fact that you've been able to allocate all of that is really wonderful for our community. So thank you.
There's no one else on the list, so I am going to kind of build upon the statement of the previous speaker. So just for clarification, you have gotten out all the funding that has been allocated to the city.
So the round two funding, it's all obligated, so we don't prepay rent, so we can authorize up to 3 months going forward. So we have round two funding that has been obligated, authorized, audited, and is just waiting to go out with the March 1st payments, the April 1st payments, and even May 1st at this point. But yes, 100% of the funding that we received directly, aside from the $943,000 we received yesterday, is completely obligated.
So just to put this in perspective, I think there was a story in NPR a few months back about how cities and states have really just scratched the surface when it came to getting these funds out. How do we compare to our peer cities or cities that we might be comparable to?
When we look at the reports that are available on the Treasury website, it's pretty clear that the agencies that received smaller amounts that were designated deeper down at the local level are more successful at getting the money out than statewide programs. And that's pretty consistent across the country. It's about scale, scope, relationships, and systems that are available and already in place. So we've done a remarkable job. The round two funding was actually supposed to last us till 2025, and we've completely obligated it. That's kind of a negative on the same respect because, they recognize that the impacts of COVID-19 are going to be felt by households for a long time. We do hope we'll receive reallocated funds from round two going forward. We have put in an additional request because we do see the demand. We see that continued demand from households that are still struggling to catch up.
So, and as of today, there's $2 million per month going into our Wichita community to families who qualified and who have been economically impacted in a negative way because of COVID-19. So they qualify for this money, and this money is going to help keep them in their homes.
Correct.
I saw the manager remove his mask, so I thought maybe he had anything, but apparently he was yawning. Okay, so with that, that's my cue to stop asking questions. So thank you so much, Director Stang. If there's no further questions, we'll open it up to the public for input. Doesn't seem like there's any public input on this item, so we'll have discussion back at the bench. Is there further discussion? Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just wanted to say, Sally, thank you for all of your work. You have been a blessing to Wichita with everything you're doing. And just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? If there is none, then I will happily make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the subrecipient agreement with the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. And with a result of 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Thank you again, Director Stang. Madam Clerk.
CARES Act funding allocation, United Way of the Plains COVID-19 Vaccination Incentive Program for the homeless.
Well, good morning again, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Sally Stang, Director of Housing and Community Services, again for the record. The second item that I have for you today is a CARES Act ESG funding allocation for the United Way of the Plains for a vaccine incentive program. So just a little background, the city of Wichita is recognized as an entitlement city with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. That entitles us to receive funding from the Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Investment Partnership Program, as well as the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. The Emergency Solutions Grant Program provides funding to improve and operate homeless shelters, rapidly rehouse families and individuals experiencing homelessness, and prevent families and individuals from becoming homeless. The city had received an additional $3,301,120 in ESG funding authorized under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, or the CARES Act. United Way of the Plains has requested ESG funding in the amount of $50,000 to support a program that would provide incentives to homeless individuals to be vaccinated for COVID-19. The $50,000 includes $15,000 for payroll and benefits to administer the program, contract labor of $5,000 for security, as well as gift card incentives of $30,000. Not just administering the program, United Way of the Plain will be actually coordinating vaccine clinics at several of the different homeless shelters around our community. They'll collaborate with those shelters and service providers to organize those clinics and opportunities for those homeless individuals to receive the vaccine and/or boosters. Funding will also be used to purchase merchandise gift cards for program participants. United Way has agreed they're going to place a label on the gift cards that indicate that they're to be used for food or personal care items only. It's a bit of a challenge whether or not that will stand, but we're trying to make sure they're used for the best purposes. They'll be purchased from local retailers where homeless individuals could purchase food items as well as those care items. They propose a $30 gift card upon receiving the first, second, or booster vaccine dose. The program anticipates 400 individuals will receive 2 doses of the vaccine and 200 will receive booster doses. The homeless management information system will be used to be able to capture. We're going to actually keep scanned copies of the vaccine cards as well as the gift cards that are given out so that we can document who received what and for what particular vaccine. It'll also help prevent the loss of those cards because that's a challenge right now, is those lost documents. So there is no impact to the general fund. Unused CARES funds from the Landlord Incentive Program will be reallocated to this program. And the city must expend 80% of its ESGCV funding, excuse me, too many letters today, by March 31st, 2022, or it's subject to recapture by HUD. And it's recommended that the City Council approve the funding allocation and authorize the funding agreement and necessary signatures. And I stand for any questions.
All right, we got a few people on for questions. So Vice Mayor Tuttle.
Thank you, and thank you, Sally, for all you do. I know it's redundant and we all could say it and never say it enough, but you're just a 21st century housing director, and we're so blessed, it's a good word, to have you here in our community. I had my breakfast for my district on Saturday, and Officer Nate from the Homeless Outreach Team was our presenter, and so I was chatting with him about this, and he's excited, of course, and supportive. But during agenda review on Friday, I asked about the gift cards. I know several of us have chatted about that and have some issues. So because Officer Nate works with this population, this is his area of expertise, I asked him for his recommendation. And he had issue with, now we didn't know about a label, but I'm not sure how effective a label is going to be. And I understand this is a challenge, but his recommendation would be that it would be for a fast food restaurant, maybe like a McDonald's or a Burger King or something. He said that he was fearful that if it was for a retailer like, Dillon's or Quick Trip, that it would be purchased with alcohol and tobacco. And so I just want to put that out there and make that known. Or maybe even there's, a combination, but I know it's hard. I know it's, throwing kind of a wrench in it when we're trying to do good work, and I don't want to impede this progress, but I just want us to be very mindful of some unintended consequences of giving people access to more alcohol and tobacco. So just wanted to make that statement.
Councilmember Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mayor. What vaccines are going to be used or given as an option for this program?
So they're going to be working with Sedgwick County, so it's going to really be about what's available at that time. They have been doing the 2-dose more recently. They did do the Johnson & Johnson early on, but we're hearing that one's more challenging even to get their hands on anymore. So the thought was it was still going to likely to be the Pfizer 2-dose.
Okay. Is there any process to make sure that the people who are coming into this program are in fact homeless?
Yes, well, they have to already exist in the homeless management information system, which means that they have to have been evaluated and engaged with one of the homeless service providers.
Okay, and this might tie into the next one. How do we keep track of who goes through, so that way somebody's not putting their health in danger by going through in back-to-back weeks or...
So we have reached out and had conversations with Sedgwick County, who's going to allow United Way to have access to be able to research whether or not somebody is already in their systems as having received doses in the past too. Because sometimes they won't even remember if they did or when they did. So they're trying to be as cautious as possible.
Okay, and again, I want to follow suit on just about everybody else who's spoken. We all appreciate you, and you're just a rock star here, so
thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. Sal, I just want to make sure that I understand, this is a cost reimbursement only, so it's up to 50,000. It
Correct.
doesn't mean that we'll spend the entire 50.
Correct.
Also, on slide 78, I believe it was, you had new numbers from what's in our green sheet. Hold on, that's
Yes,
not
they
78.
didn't finalize, I apologize, I wanted to bring that to your attention
Because
too.
when I looked at the
They
green
finalized the contract
sheet, it
after the green
was-
sheet was created.
Yeah, the green sheet was 15,000 for incentives and 35,000 for staffing. And I'm like, only the government could figure out how to spend 35,000 to give out 15. So I'm glad to see these numbers on the other side. It makes it more efficient. So how did we get the new numbers?
So that was through negotiations with United Way. Even the addition to needing security staffing was, just came around to say, oh, you know what, these are like cash. We're going to make sure we're going to be bringing lots of people together. We probably need security too.
Right, but I guess my specific question is, we went from 275 individuals being vaccinated to 600, or
Correct.
vaccinations. How did those numbers change so dramatically?
That was really through United Way reaching out and figuring out with Union Rescue Mission, all the other different homeless service providers, how many people that they thought they could actually bring in during the term of the contract.
But aren't those people already known to us based off Councilmember Hoheisel's question earlier, that we know how many people are in the system already?
We do, and there's more than 600 people in the homeless management information
Right, okay.
system. Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have the same concerns as Vice Mayor Tuttle. How do we plan to regulate if we're gonna do 30 and 30, that's $60 worth of gift cards? How do we somehow ensure that that is spent on food or hygiene?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It really is, because, I hate to say it, but fast food's not their healthiest option either. And it would negate people from being able to get other supplies that are necessary and often hard to attain for homeless individuals, particularly hygiene care, things like that. Doing fast food is a challenge there too. Been investigating further on, trying to find if there are other cards available that have use restrictions. I've only been able to find that Walmart actually issues a card that specifically will not allow the purchase of alcohol, tobacco, firearms, or lottery tickets. But getting the people we're going to be giving these cards to Walmart is going to be a challenge. So that's one of the biggest challenges too, because it has to be for somewhere they can get to. Not an easy answer.
And I'll just add to that, I think that, frankly, one of the reasons why we're talking about this is the fact that just a few weeks ago, we had so many members of our homeless or population who's experiencing homelessness who were coming down with COVID, that some of the shelters had to actually close down. And this is a way to respond to that. I understand the concerns about misuse of the gift card, but in the end, I don't think there's any reason to believe it will be misused in a high percentage or any more than anyone else with any other type of incentive. I just don't think there's any indication that folks who are experiencing homelessness are going to misuse this any more than any other folks who in our community. I think that overall, while I understand the concerns, again, the goal is to get people who want to get vaccinated so they themselves can stay healthy, so that the community can stay healthy, and so that service providers can stay healthy. So, and this incentive card might be, we have seen through this pandemic, an incentive does actually work to get people to think about, who might not have thought about getting vaccinated, to think twice about it. So with that, is there any further discussion on this item? Anything from the public? We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Further discussion? So if no further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the funding allocation and authorize the funding agreement and the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open roll. Members cast the vote. Yes, that everyone cast the vote. Very nice. Having received 5 yea votes to 2 nay votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
2022 Community Services Block Grant Application.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Good morning, Mayor, Council. My name is Nichelle Williams. I'm the Program Coordinator for the WISCAP Division, stands for Wichita Sedgwick County Community Action Partnership, inside of the Housing Department with my great Director, Sally Stang, so it's an honor. So this morning I bring to you and present to you our 2022 Community Service Block Grant Application. Just a little bit of background for you this morning. Our Community Service Block Grant is funded and designing to lessen poverty in our communities. This program has been around with us for about 30 years. The funding is provided by the KHRC, which is the Kansas Housing and Resource, and there are 8 programs inside of the state of Kansas that administer these funds. A little bit about our timeline. December the 21st, we received the preliminary guidance of the funding amounts of that we received from KHRC. And then in January of this year, the committee, we took it before our committee, reviewed some funding recommendations, made some small changes, and then decided how we needed to move forward coming up for this new grant cycle. The application is due for us on February the 28th of this year, and then the grant cycle will begin April the 1st of 2022. Our CSBG committee involves 12 representatives. 8 of them are appointed by you all, our council, and 4 is through the Neighborhood Community Resource Center. The committee met on January the 6th, 2022 to review the application, program guidelines, and our expenditures. A little bit about some of the great accomplishments that we have done for 2021. We had 121 individuals that were assisted with employment training, had the opportunity to get jobs, learn different resources, attend different work opportunities such as allied healthcare, truck driving school, and we were able to pay and assist them with those opportunities. Another great thing is, as you know, we are within the COVID season, and so we also created an emergency assistance support services for people outside of the WERAP scope to offer some additional assistance, and so we were able to offer 340 people those services as well.
Bless you.
We are still continuing our great partnership with Project Access, and they are doing a great job by offering 634 uninsured eligible individuals who were able to receive prescriptions and medical supplies. It's a little bit higher than what we had before, and the reason why there is 2020 data is because we don't have their 2021 data in us yet, and we usually don't get that until about March. Our employment training, you will see, of the 121, 46 of those became employed, and so their income did increase. And then we still continue our long-term relationship with Public Parks, Works, which allows us to work with 132 youth in the city by offering summer camp activities where they receive that for 10 weeks. So our recommended funding, we want to continue what we currently have right now. We have 6 staff that are very engaged and working with a lot of people in our community. With those 6 staffs, we are looking forward to being able to engage with 275 eligible individuals to offer them some sort of assistance through our WISCAP program, where we're offering training development, how to build a resume, all of those different things. Continuing our relationship with Project Access, which will be $200,000, and they're looking at increasing about 700 uninsured citizens this year, upcoming year. The employment training piece also, $140,000, and that'll be able to allow us to support about 55 of those participants. What that does is, when we do that, is give them about $10,000 to $12,000 sometimes to allow them to go back to school to get a CMA license or something to that regards. And then continuing our summer camp activities with our summer camp program, which is the $50,000, 175 youth inside of the city of Wichita will be able to attend a summer camp program through Park and Recreation Department. Law Department has reviewed and approved our funding agreements to form, and we are just asking that the council approve the 2022 CSB grant year application in the amount of $977,682 and authorize necessary signatures. And I stand for any questions that you may have this morning.
Any questions for staff? See none. Thank you. Is there input from the public? See none. Oh, looks like we might have a question for staff. Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just real quick, on the medical equipment, do we have any partnership with the medical loan closet?
No. Right now, we're currently just using with the project access, and they have an agreement. Now, they do sometimes the sub-agreements where they're working with additional resources outside, but we actually only are allocating just to the project access.
Okay. Thanks.
Further questions? See none. Go back to input from the public. See none, we'll come back to the bench. Is there further discussion? If there is no further discussion, then I'll make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to approve the 2022 Community Service Block Grant Funding Application and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance amendments to section 3.49.020 regarding licensing of emergency record services.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council. Ronald Hunt, Captain with the Wichita Police Department. Today I'm here in regards to the amendments of Chapter 349 in regards to the emergency record service. Just a little bit of history. Since 1978, the city has licensed emergency record services. The WPD uses these record services on a rotation basis to remove vehicles from accident scenes. And then since 2010, the city has had contracts with record companies to tow impounded vehicles. WPD is recommending changes to the impound contract and emergency record service to improve and streamline the removal of vehicles from accident scenes. Record companies are requesting the review of current fee structure set by the ordinance and to be allowed, to close offices for major holidays. The emergency record license will expire on March 1st of 2022, and it is recommended that the ordinance be amended and current licenses extended for May 1st, 2022, to allow the parties an opportunity to discuss requested ordinance changes. Recommended actions, it is recommended that the City Council place the necessary minutes on the first reading and authorize all necessary signatures. And I stand for any questions you may have.
Is there questions for staff? See none. Thank you. Is there input from the public on this item? See none. We'll bring discussion back to the bench. Is there further discussion on this item? If there is no further discussion, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to place the ordinance on first read and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast their vote. Have received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Meeting summary for Community Task Force to review Youth Correction System Standards, February 3rd, 2022.
So this is I believe we're just receiving and filing this. Is there any member who wishes to speak to this? If not, then I will make a motion that we receive and file the task force minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. I've received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
Let's start off with appointments. Are there any appointments at this time? Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. I have quite a few. For diversity and inclusion and civil rights, I had a resignation, so I would like to appoint Valerie White to diversity and inclusion and civil rights. For Board of Park Commissioners, I'd like to reappoint Alejo Cabral. For the Historic Preservation Board, I'd like to reappoint Janice Rich. For Police and Fire Board of Trustees, I'd like to reappoint Tracy Adams. For Animal Control Advisory Board, I'd like to appoint Ellen Corner, because I had a resignation there. For District Advisory Board, I'd like to reappoint Joseph Tex Dozier, Katie Brozek, Leslie Davis, LaWanda DeShazier, and then appoint Ben Blankley, Jesse Wigdahl, and Cameron LeBron. I will send all of those to the clerk.
Is there further appointments at this time? If there's not, then I will make a motion to accept the appointments. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Tuttle. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the vote. Having received 7 yea votes, that motion does pass, and those appointments are made. Back on comments. Are there any comments or announcements for the good of the body? If there is none, then I'll make a motion that we adjourn. Oh, do we have a... All right, if there's no more comments, thought for a moment we might have had some comments, then I will make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion is seconded. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast the vote. I've received 7 yea votes. That motion does pass, and we are adjourned.